All right. I think we are live. It says excellent feed. I'm going to give it a second here until I see it, and we'll get started. Then I'm going to have to charge my phone, so give me just a second. We'll see if we are live here. It usually takes about 30 seconds for everything to connect. Camera, microphone, all working. Looks like we have a live feed, but it's not showing up just yet. There we go. Let me plug in my phone. We'll get started. All right. Welcome, everybody. This is the Rice Report. I'll give everybody a few minutes to get settled in here and on the road to understanding what in the heck is going on in this world right now. There's a lot of crazy stuff, guys. There is a lot of very interesting things happening around the world. You're watching an old system break, a new system be ushered in. There's plenty of caution for that, by the way. I will extend that. I know a lot of people are just very excited, but there's give and takes when it comes to changing systems, changing models, things like that. There always are. It's just part of the process. Tonight's show should be very short and to the point, very heavily focused on economics and what's going on in the markets. I think that's where most people's minds are anyway. So I'm going to give everyone about 15, 20 seconds before we get started here. And of course, if you're watching this live and you have to go grab a snack or something like that, go ahead and do that now. Or if you need to watch this tomorrow, this episode should be up tomorrow. It'll definitely be recorded live on YouTube, but it will be on Rumble, and of course it'll be broadcast to iHeartRadio, Spotify, a bunch of other places out there, wherever I am. I'm being told constantly to remind you all, if you like my content, you like what we're doing, click on the subscribe button, all that good stuff. I leave that to the kids. I do this because I love y'all and I want to share this information. And I just see things out in the market that I think need to be understood. Really, the big purpose of this podcast is just breaking down real life events, real world events, and just getting them to a point where we can understand it and have conversations with other people. We are severely lacking in many of our different educational areas, from childhood to adult. And there's a lot of stuff to be said about that, about the educational system, but it doesn't mean we can't help each other to understand this. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Rice Report, everybody. I am Eric Rice. So good to have you here this evening. It is Thursday, 9 p.m., March 6th. We are exactly 5 days away from the 5-year anniversary of COVID. I bring that up quite a bit with people because I think we forget oftentimes that, you know, this 5 years ago is a long time, and some people will look at it. I kind of look at it from two perspectives. It seems like yesterday, and it also seems like a million years ago. But 5 years ago, next week, we were all locked down, forced to socially distance. Our children were forced to stay in school. We were told to wear masks. Many of us did not. We were tortured and ostracized in our hometowns. Many of us moved from blue states to red states, and we're watching this whole transformation of the country. And I think that COVID had a lot to do with that. It was a big wake-up call for many people. So next week we'll be doing kind of a COVID memory timeline. I mean, some of the funny things that happened in COVID, they're not funny. It was all mean, but there were certainly ways to find laughter. And I'm going to pull some of the videos from online that kind of reflect back on that 5-year period of just complete idiocracy and chaos. But let's go ahead and get started here. This is the Rice Report. Of course, subscribe and like and do all that kind of stuff if you like what we're talking about here. We'd love to have our subscription grow. I don't make any money. I don't pull in any money from this stuff, but I certainly want to have as many people watching it as possible so we can make things simple. That is the entire goal of this show. I certainly have many conversations with economists and traders and all that kind of stuff, and you can get really into the weeds and the details of things. But I really try to take what's happening in the markets and politics and in spirituality and religion around the country, around the world, bring it to you every night as often as I can. It's only been about twice a week here for a few months. Busy with work, all that kind of stuff. I am a working person. I'm not a podcaster, so it's not what I do. But I will be getting a little bit more active here. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing a crypto episode. I'm going to go through two major things people don't understand. What a stable coin is. That's the biggest legislation that's coming through. You should understand what a stable coin is, how it works, how it should work, the benefits and the dangers. And then we're going to talk about proof of work versus proof of stake when it comes to cryptocurrencies. There's a major difference between the two, so the goods and the bads of all, and we'll get into discussing kind of the difference between Bitcoin and altcoins and all that good stuff. But I think it's just basic education. I'm not going to try to sway you into anything. Just give you a basic rundown on education without an opinion. We are approaching a mass educational era in the United States when it comes to digital currencies, digital assets, Bitcoin, all this kind of stuff. And I want to help you get ahead of that so that you have a good foundation as these things start to roll out. And it looks like they're going to roll out pretty hard. And we'll go into tokenization of assets and all that kind of stuff in the next few episodes that we do this. But let's start out where we start out all the time. Let's get into money, then politics, and then religion. And I think that these are the three things that they've always told us not to talk about. And they have always tried to restrict us from being able to speak openly about things that actually matter. I don't care what the weather is. I don't care how you bought your house or all that kind of stuff. We all need to be having very deep conversations because we're going through a transformational period, and that's going to require a lot of education. And the good part is, especially with digital products and digital assets, we're going to see this big open forum where right now pretty much the only place you can get your information is like the influencers who influence each thing. So you get the good of this and the bad of everything else, and there's good and bad in everything, to be honest with you. There always, if there's not good and bad in something, if you can't look at it from two sides, it's probably a scam. So there's always something good and always something bad, and we're going to try to break those down for you in as simple a possible way as I can. It won't be like an advanced masterclass. I don't have a Patreon or anything like that. Just basic, simple information. But let's get into what we always talk about right now, which is always the money. It's important that we understand that because money makes the world go round. It's actually the spirit that makes the world go round. But in today's day and age, money does drive happiness and prosperity all throughout the world. We need to focus on that. It's really important to understand that our trade deficit actually grew by 25.6% in January. This is a huge number. Imports rose by 11.9% and exports rose by 2%. This is basic 101 pre-tariff, pre-trade war observation, right? Like people are hearing what Trump is saying, hearing him talk about tariffs in in October when he really came out hard about it. Once they knew he was getting into office in January, a lot of U.S. companies were importing what they need to make products here or importing extra inventory. And then we were exporting as much as we could before the tariffs took place. And the tariffs are intact with certain products. So they're very confusing. I just had a couple great interviews that'll come out tomorrow and over the weekend. And I think it'll give you enough content to absorb. I had a great conversation earlier on, a couple interviews back about tariffs. I think it's important to understand them, but it's not necessarily like you don't need to, there's no class that'll be taught on this or there's no test at the end of the day. So I think if we just kind of focus in on understanding that tariffs are going to bring income into the country, you will be paying to import into the United States. It'll be comparable to what we're paying to export. And that's going to generate a lot of new revenue and open up the door for us to be able to reduce or eliminate taxation. And it really does kind of look like that's where Trump wants to go. But again, all these things that he's doing right now, executive orders and all these big, everything is hyped up. We live in a huge hype machine. These executive orders, many of them still need to go through Congress. So you're going to see a lot of politicking, a lot of lobbying. Pay attention to the lobbying. That is going to be, when you start seeing people spending money to keep you enslaved in taxes, you need to stop voting for those people. It's just kind of point blank. I'm very excited because Senator Massey has actually submitted an End the Fed bill again. It's the second time he submitted it. I think it'll be taken seriously now. I don't know many people claim to know how that'll happen. That's a big political to-do that I'll go through as it gets more real. But executive orders are not law changes. Some of them certainly are. Procedural stuff can be changed, but laws themselves need to go through Congress. So take a deep breath in those time frames and just understand there's still quite a ways to go. But the trade deficit absolutely widened. There's an economist on X named Infra who is just really brilliant. He brought up a very interesting topic the other day in a space. He said that the top 1% of wealth, so the elite, I hate that we call them elite, by the way, the elite of this country in particular, their wealth is equivalent to the trade deficit. And I always found that interesting to see that number. So as the trade deficit widened in January, I fully expect that trade deficit to be choked out in the next coming months with pending trade war and tariffs and things like that. Very important to note. The market itself today, we lost $1.12 trillion in the stock market today. $1.12 trillion in the market today. It was a big sell-off. Donald Trump made two statements today, which I found very interesting. Number one, he said, I'm not paying attention to the stock market. I don't believe that for a moment. It's good game theory, good showmanship. And then he also said globalists are selling off in the market. I actually believe that. So the markets themselves are separate from the economy. And I think most people don't put those two things together. Markets and the economy are very separate. Our markets have done very well over the last 4 or 5 years, really well. And our economy is struggling, and that's evidenced by the Atlanta Fed, who has dropped their expectation for the GDP, this coming first quarter GDP, from positive 3.9% to negative 2.8%. And many people are asking, how can that happen? And there's a gentleman on Twitter who said that that's directly correlated to gold. He's right in certain aspects. The way that gold is treated on importation, there is a ton. I've covered this a few times. There's a ton of gold moving into this country. People are calling on delivery in a pending trade war. If there is a trade war, you could get tariffed on that gold. So they're shipping it into the United States before that happens. But gold is treated very differently. Not all gold is treated the same. Now, when gold is shipped into the country, it's technically an import. So that will lower certain parts of the GDP depending on how the gold is justified. So if it's strictly as an investment, it's treated in one way. If it's going to be used for jewelry, if it's used as a material product for a new product to be built, it's treated in a different way. I think it's a little reckless to say that the expectation in the GDP is completely correlated to the amount of gold, because it's not. Mathematically, it's about $600 billion short of a direct correlation. I think what we're watching here with this expectation, and this is not the GDP, this is what the Atlanta Fed expects the GDP to do. Now, this has a lot to do with data. For the last 4 years, we have gotten bad data. We have gotten lied to by the federal government to basically appease us into voting for people who are lying to us. I mean, that's pretty much how it works. Jobs numbers were off. The GDP has been very bolstered. All the numbers we've received, even with the EIA and some of these other agencies, we have been lied to. And I think we're starting to see a combination of gold imports. I think we're seeing the trade restrictions that will punish the economy and the markets for a period of time until it becomes normalized. Every time that there is a major change in the world, there's pain and then there's progress. If you're sitting around on your couch and not doing anything and you decide to go to the gym, it's going to be very painful for a couple of weeks until your body gets used to it. This is no different than it is in the economy. And we are making big changes in the economy, which impacts the market. And we're going to see these changes over time. So the Atlanta Fed projecting a negative 2.8% GDP growth quarter one. That's not a final number. It's a projection. I can see that happening. I can see a negative first quarter, potentially a negative second quarter. And then I think we turn the corner. In general, for years, I share real information. I share statistics. I really keep my opinion out of the numbers. I'll kind of tell you what I think is happening with them. But today will be a little different. I'm actually seeing something in the numbers that's giving me a tremendous amount of optimism moving forward. I'm going to get into that in just a moment. But it's important to note that we are going to go through probably one, if not 2 quarters of significant decreases in pain and increases in pain, decreases in employment. I think that's coming very sharply, and that's the numbers are telling me that very obviously. And I think that that's going to be very good for the country, and that doesn't make sense to say, but I'm going to explain it as we go through. Now, with the jobs market, ADP, a private payroll issuer, they are very, very closely related to the Bureau for Labor Statistics. And they are the private sector versus the BLS, which is the public sector, who has lied to you consistently for 4 years. ADP has kind of been where the real people have been watching. They expected last month, 141,000 new jobs. The actual number came back at 77,000 jobs. That is a 50% decrease. This is actually a really bad thing when you look at it from one perspective, and a really good thing for the economy from a different lens, which again, I'll get into in the end. Another stat that came out relating to the market itself. This was an interesting stat. Anthony Pompliano put this out. About 25 years ago, you used to have to spend 25 hours of work to buy one share of the S&P 500. Today, that's 195 hours. That's a true sign of inflation, where it used to cost you 25 hours of work on an average wage to buy one share of the S&P 500. It now costs you 195 hours to buy one share of the S&P 500. These are really significant stats, and I think that actually might be 50 years ago. But I just thought that was fascinating. We've gone from 25 hours of work to 195 hours of work to buy one share of the S&P 500. And this is evidenced by the way that the market is working. The way that the economy is supposed to work is that we have fair wages, full employment, low taxation, a lot of money rotating in the system. That's just simply not where we are. I've been covering unemployment rates and credit card defaults and credit card rates and household debt for a very long time. And now the numbers are kind of proving this. Currently, the top 10% of earners, that's people who make $250,000 a year or more, the top 10% of earners in this country now spend 50% of discretionary spending in the market. That means that a very small group of people are spending half of the money in the economy. These are not good signs. Those are actually signs of socialism. These are signs where you have a very top-heavy upper class and a very weak lower class. And currently, the bottom 52% of wealth in this country controls 2.4% of all the wealth. The top 1% controls somewhere near 19 to 21%. The top 0.1% is half of that. So we're a very top-heavy country right now, very much a caste system. And this is created by monopolies. Monopolies run this country. I've been nagging, pulling at the string for 10 years of my life, but really online and podcasts and chats, really reminding people that we have antitrust laws. They do exist. When there are monopolies, our government is supposed to step in. They're supposed to limit someone's unfair advantage in the marketplace. And that started to happen with Google. But what we're watching right now, make no mistake, nothing has changed in Washington, D.C. yet. Money can buy everyone and everything. And Google scrambled to go meet with Trump today because they are facing antitrust violations and cases. They are going to plead their case to Donald Trump that they are not a monopoly. Now, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a businessman. I'm all for the best man wins. That's exactly how it works. But when you control 90% of ad search or search in general on the internet, 90%, you are a monopoly. And there's no problem with that. If your product is so good that you have 90% of consumers want to buy you, I don't have a problem with that. That's not the issue. The issue is when you have that much market dominance, you begin to buy all the other competitors until you own 100% of it. Then you are locked into an oligarchy that cannot be undone. We're getting close to that with companies like Google and Facebook. And more importantly, the revenue they're bringing in from an unfair market advantage, they are literally able to buy anyone and anything that they desire, which is why you've seen such large mergers, Facebook buying Instagram and WhatsApp and all these other acquisitions. These things should have been stopped from the beginning, but we've allowed it to happen. So Google is now really trying to get themselves out of a difficult situation because they are a monopoly, and an antitrust lawsuit will take years, make no mistake. But in the end, I can't figure out how they wouldn't be a monopoly in this country and potentially globally. Now, oil and gas, on the other hand, this is an interesting dynamic. So oil is pricing in a recession. So typically in a recession, oil will drop. And we are watching oil. It's down to, what is it today? Let's go through the numbers. The DXY is down to, that's the dollar value versus a basket of select foreign countries' currencies, primarily the big global countries. It has dropped from 110. That's 10% above par, so that's very strong on the U.S. dollar. It has dropped from 110 to 104 since January. That's a pretty significant drop in the value of the dollar. Oil is trading at 62.45 today, and natural gas, 1 MCF unit of natural gas is $4.27. These two pieces of energy are going in opposite directions. Oil is falling, gas is rising. Gas is going to rise. I called this a little while ago. I'm very bullish on natural gas. I think natural gas has a huge run ahead of them because of AI. Most people don't realize, one of the things I'm doing is building an off-grid energy facility using energy arbitrage from natural gas and ethane to create 8 megawatts of power to power a Bitcoin mine, which ultimately could be an AI center. But you're watching a lot of innovation occur in this space where people are looking at new ways of finding energy without being dependent upon the grid. Natural gas is the easiest way. It's captured gas using ethane you'd burn off. Natural gas is going to have a big run with AI. Natural gas already powers about 64% of our manufacturing facilities in this country. Natural gas has a big upside. Oil, on the other hand, is going to go through some struggles with tariffs. That's just point blank. There's just no way around that. And when you have tariffs that are impacting foreign lands like Europe, there's a lot of problems there. I'm going to go into that in just a minute. When you see that happen, you're going to see oil prices in recessions down and natural gas spikes up. We are in the winter, so natural gas has a higher price at this juncture. But we're also watching, and I know this firsthand, there's a lot of natural gas plays out there. People are looking for different ways to capture this natural gas, ethane, propane, the ANES, and turn it into megawatts of electricity for mining and for AI and high compute. This will be a huge market, like the high compute, AI and mining space is going to be a very, very large business moving forward. In fact, Belarus actually just authorized their excess energy to be used for Bitcoin mining. So this is a big industry and it's expanding around the globe, and natural gas will have a big play in that. The global money supply, it's always important to talk about that. So global money supply has increased. This is not just the US, this is globally. Global money supply has increased 12.6% per year for the last 10 years. That has created a 71% debasement of global currencies. So what does that mean? Every year they're printing 12.6% more money and putting it into circulation. And because they're doing that, they're diluting the buying power of every dollar, yen, and euro that's out there. And the money 10 years ago that you have in your pocket had 71% more buying power. We are watching global inflation. It's an infection that spreads from nation to nation in fiat currencies. And we are watching, I'm going to go into Japan a little bit later. That's a very interesting story that I'm just trying to keep this short tonight. I usually go a little bit too long. But when we watch money supply increase, energy prices going crazy, especially natural gas, we start to see an impact on foreign countries. And something that's happened in the last 2 days is we've watched foreign bonds, Germany, Spain, all these foreign nations, their bond yields are spiking. So I'm going to always remind people how it works. The only way that the yield on a bond, the coupon on a bond actually goes up is when the value of the bond goes down. The value of a bond goes down because people are selling and not buying. Now in Europe, pretty much across the board, over the last 2 days, we've seen a 10% increase in bond yields, specifically starting in Germany. So I had this question asked on Telegram. Eric D, I got you on here. He asked me this, and I put together a list because it's a pretty simple conclusion as to what's happening here. There's geopolitical unrest and economic uncertainty that's happening out there with tariffs and what's happening in Ukraine, which I'll get into in a moment. But there are also policy changes that are happening in Europe. You got to remember, Donald Trump just cut off funding for the Ukrainian war, which is a good thing. And when that happened, Europe said, well, you know what, we're gonna rally up $800 billion or some crazy number, which they're never going to hit. And it forces them to work with their central banks to warm up their money printers. And the fear of that happening in Europe right now is what's spiking these bond prices. Also, the cost of energy, fear of tariffs, U.S. funding has been cut off. We are now going to a trade war with Europe, which we always should have been. I don't think people realize, and Doge really hasn't put this together because we haven't audited it yet, but through U.S. aid and some of these other organizations, we actually send billions and hundreds of billions of dollars as subsidies to European nations, which is just ridiculous. So they should stand on their own. But it's something that we've done. So not only are they losing that free money from the United States, there's also an added tax for shipping over the limited amount of products we buy from Europe. It's not a whole lot. Mexico is almost nothing, and we're a much bigger part of everyone else's GDP than they are of ours, which is why we're going through this tariff exercise. But that's a big part of it. Also in Germany, they created something called, they broke a bond called debt breaks. So in Germany, they used to have this kind of like our debt ceiling. They basically got rid of it. And they are looking to put $500 billion into play to bolstering their infrastructure in Germany. Germany is in shambles. These policy changes are done. Germany is completely run by left-wing progressive socialist lunatics who have essentially starved out their own people, changed the entire culture of their nation through immigration. And I think that they're on their last leg right now. So they are putting together policies right now that are designed to increase money printing so that the government can borrow money and their people pay it back, just like that happens here. So the ECB, the European Central Bank, they have been really kind of propping up the money printers based on the UK and Germany coming out with, needing to fund this war in Ukraine, that it appears to me from the outside that actually everyone wants peace there. I think that's obvious. Trump has been very strong about peace. Putin has extended peace. Zelensky doesn't want it because, last year there's 10.1% increase in millionaires in Ukraine, and this year they're expected to double that number. So there's easy money that's being had there, and it's so easy, in fact, the Prime Minister of Slovak, Prime Minister Fico, has stated that he believes that at least half of the funding from the U.S. and the EU that has gone into Ukraine, at least half of it has been stolen. These are things that are well known. They're now being proven, which is a good thing. But we are watching a lot of things happen right now. So I'm going to run through a little bit. The DXY 104, the VIX, which is the volatility index. If you want to see how the market is reacting and what they think is going to happen, watch the VIX, the VIX. That has fluctuated between 17 and 25 for the last week. That's that kind of bouncing mechanism on the chart. It really lets you understand what traders are anticipating. The Dow Jones is down 5% over the last month. Again, a little over $1 trillion was erased today. Gold is trading at $29.12 and silver at $32.90. That's a really good number for silver. I think there's a good market to be had there. Once gold, gold has doubled since 2023. Gold has doubled. It has a 100% return since 2023, early 23. And silver has, I think it's about 45%. But I think silver has a big run in it, and 3290 is a big number. I think, and don't quote me on this, but the breakout number on the chart, technical charts, which to me almost mean nothing with precious metals, but the technical breakout is like 3280 or 3380. So we're about 90 cents away from that breakout point where you could see a big lift. I went through gas and oil. I'll get into the SBR in just a moment. But now that we understand that there's kind of this, it seems like calamity, right? Like everything seems to be breaking. I actually think it's being fixed. One thing that is bad, I'm going to share before we go up here. Almost every single person I've talked to in insurance, and I've had some people share it on my Telegram page, almost everyone is talking about, from insurance companies, that insurance premiums are going up. That's absolutely going to happen. Insurance is a scam. I'm going to put that point blank again. I love if you don't like what I'm saying, please comment on YouTube, because anything you say I can counteract. Insurance is a forced tax. If you want to insure something because you're scared about it, that's great. Insurance has a role in this world for sure. Mandated insurance is a scam. So if I have to have insurance on my home or on my car, I really don't have the ability to manage my rates. Once you have me having to buy something and you can dictate how much I have to pay you, that's a scam. That's literally a scam. And I think we're going to see that happen, see changes happening in insurance, because there are so many people who can't afford insurance, so they're dropping their insurance on their car, which puts them at risk of getting in trouble with the law. These are really ridiculous things. If we fixed the money, lowered our taxes, and created a profitable environment, I wouldn't need insurance for my car. I could just buy a new one and fix somebody else's car. It would also get rid of all the litigation that occurs from all these stupid things. Insurance primarily is just a way to pay for lawyers. That's really what it is. So everyone talks about the Fed and taxes. Let's talk about insurance. Forced, mandated, legally mandated insurance is a tax. Let's just put it where it is. And every tax is a scam until proven otherwise. And right now, everything you pay to the government is proven to be a scam. I cannot see how Americans can stomach paying taxes during tax season when we now know that most of our money is killing people and contorting nations. Like, this is a really tumultuous time in this country. But I'm seeing the light down the end of the tunnel. And this is where I want to be positive before we go into politics, which is, I also think, very positive. I'm positive because there's a difference between the market and the economy. And I want you to remember that forever. There's a huge difference between the markets and the economy. Our economy has been struggling, inching along for 4 years, despite what you hear on the news, because our markets have been booming. The stock market has nothing to do with Main Street. Wall Street and Main Street are completely different things. But what are we seeing right now? We're seeing the government shut down, massive layoffs, corporate layoffs are coming. I think before I got on here, I think I read that they're laying off a couple thousand people at Southwest Airlines. These things are going to continue. When AI comes into play, people are going to lose their job. Those who can use AI effectively, they'll actually get raises and find new jobs. But this is inevitable. There's really not a whole lot you can do about it. So there's going to be a big influx of people who are laid off in the next 6 months. This is actually a positive thing from my perspective. Why? Because small business sentiment, Wall Street sentiment is down. Investor sentiment is way down. Small businesses are really excited for the Trump era. They're extremely excited. There'll be favorable tax environments, much easier lending. We're watching the yield on the 10-year drop. The 10-year is really what your loans are based on. It has nothing to do with the Fed rates, which we just saw. The Federal Reserve dropped rates a few months ago, and then 2 days later, the 10-year skyrocketed. Again, the 10-year yield skyrocketed because people were selling and not buying the bonds, and the price was going down. Well, our mortgages are tied to the 10-year. Almost all the interest rates that we get are tied to the 10-year. And because the 10-year is going down, like I talked about in my last live, a big sell-off in the stock market, people move from stocks to bonds in times of uncertainty. And when that happens, the price of the bonds go up and the yield goes down. So we are watching this transition. This 10-year going down creates a lot of lending opportunities. So we have a bunch of small businesses, which are the heartbeat of America. It's the heartbeat. It's not the Walmarts and the Metas and these huge companies that they pay well. Most people just become corporate slaves until they retire, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the heartbeat of America and the heartbeat of freedom and the heartbeat of a capitalist society is always in small and mid-sized businesses, family-owned businesses. And when there's a lot of layoffs, there's a lot of talent in the market. There's a lot of people looking for jobs. Right now, there are no jobs. In the next 3 to 5 months, I anticipate those yields going down, lending to increase. We are going to print money regardless of what the government tells you. By the end of the year, I think we will print a lot of money. So we'll have a weakened dollar, which is actually good because it opens up a lot of opportunities. A weakened dollar is accompanied by lower interest rates and a lower 10-year yield. This makes it easier for small businesses to borrow money, hire new people, create companies of really positive impact, and get back to that small and mid-sized business environment that built and maintains America. And we're also going to see a big increase in M2 money supply. That's the money in checking and savings account. That number is massively on the rise. And because that's on the rise, Bitcoin is going to be on the rise in the future as well. About an hour and a half ago, David Sachs put out a tweet, or an X, or whatever we call them these days, that Donald Trump signed an executive order to create a Bitcoin strategic reserve and create an altcoin, or not Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, strategic stockpile. Now, the market will make a lot about this, and I'm a Bitcoiner, so I'm very excited. At the same time, it means nothing. It's an executive order. It's just basically saying what they did today and what they'll talk about in the crypto summit, whatever they're calling it tomorrow, is how we're going to start creating this new market, this new environment. And believe me, Bitcoin's not going anywhere. And there's certainly some really good software plays in the crypto space that I think are going to serve businesses and banks and all those things in a really good manner. They're just not the same thing. And I think that people are starting to understand this. So the goods and the bad. The bad, it's just an executive order. At the same time today, in Texas, the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve for the state of Texas passed the Senate. Now it has to go through the House and the governor. We don't know if that'll happen, but it is exciting to see people getting interested in storing digital assets, and specifically Bitcoin, because that's the only thing that's been approved for those. But the federal Strategic Bitcoin Reserve that came out today, number one, it's a huge nod of credibility to Bitcoin. They basically have said, we've heard that there'll be a bunch of altcoins in there with Bitcoin, and now it's just Bitcoin. It is now being set in its own parameters. It is its own living organism. All the crypto that are out there are not the same. We'll go through that in the next couple of weeks. Doesn't mean they're bad. There are certainly ones that are terrible. Like they're bad. You shouldn't you do whatever you want with your money. I hate when people tell other people what to do with their money. I think there's some interesting plays in the crypto space, but they're just not Bitcoin. They're totally different things. So now that we have that separated legally, I think it's a big nod to credibility. What they've basically said is the Bitcoin they've confiscated or stolen from other people that they hold, they're going to continue to hold, call it a strategic Bitcoin reserve, and that they may buy more Bitcoin if it doesn't cost the taxpayer any money. Now, on the altcoin side, they've said the altcoins that we own, we're going to hold, but we're not buying any altcoins. So if anyone's telling you the government's going to buy all of your altcoins, I think that was kind of squashed today. Things change. I'm not going to say that, but things definitely change. But it is very interesting and I think a very good clarity in the space. And I think they handled it perfectly. On the other hand, it says as long as there are, what do they call that, budget neutral, if there's budget neutral capital, that they will buy more Bitcoin or may buy more Bitcoin. They will not buy altcoins. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. I think what it means is essentially if there's money laying around that the taxpayers don't have to pay for, then the government can invest in more Bitcoin. And whether you like Bitcoin or don't understand it, and it's fine. I'm not a toxic person trying to convince you of things. I love Bitcoin. I have a significant amount of my wealth in Bitcoin. I'm happy to talk about it with you anytime. But it seems to cause division, right? It's one of the more psyoped parts of society today. But I think what's really interesting about this is the announcement came 2 days after the government essentially said, hey, we're putting 400 government buildings on sale, including Nancy Pelosi's building in San Francisco. And I believe something with Obama's library also being put up for sale. So the government has all these big, really expensive, in the FBI building. So now they have this 400 building real estate portfolio up for sale that someone's going to buy, like real estate speculators are going to buy them. Some of these government buildings are in great places. That's a budget neutral move. The government could sell those buildings and buy more Bitcoin. And I think that's a good thing. And if you don't, study Bitcoin. I'm not here to convert you. Either you understand it or you don't. It's pretty obvious the world is going to buy it. If you want to own altcoins, I fully endorse that. It's your money. But I think everyone should have some Bitcoin just in case it takes off. But it's interesting because this all spawned from a tweet that came from David Sachs today and said, we've sold 195,000 Bitcoin in its existence with the United States government for like $368 million, meaning the government lost exactly $17 billion by selling Bitcoin. So they're not going to sell Bitcoin anymore, and they'll probably buy some more. That's up to them. But I find that very interesting that they have this budget neutral approach. My thoughts on this, I put them out on Telegram and Twitter. I'm all for strategic reserves as long as like our government is run on debt and taxpayer debt. Like we pay the government or they print money. They don't have the right to print. I don't endorse the right of the government to print money to buy any crypto, any Bitcoin. If you can find a way to do it in a budget neutral environment, which is exactly what I wanted from this, it's a tremendous thing for this country. I think Bitcoin in the next 10 years could take care of the entire national debt, especially when you liquidate a lot of these expensive buildings you're paying mortgages on and start putting them into an asset that has been proven to appreciate better than any other asset in human history over a 15-year period. So we'll see what happens with that. And it's a big battle online and people get really, really emotional about their cryptos. It's just another asset. It just is what it is. Be nice to people. It's not that difficult. But I think it's an exciting time for this, guys. I really do. And I actually hope that the states do it and buy it first. I really hope Texas passes this. I think it's a pretty obvious play that since Bitcoin requires energy, you actually have to do real work. You can't just mint it, pre-mine it out of nowhere and hand it to your buddies. You actually have to earn Bitcoin. There's never been a single one given away for free. In that environment, the energy-rich states are going to do this. And I think Texas is the number one Bitcoin mining state in the country. And globally, it would be its own separate nation for Bitcoin mining. So exciting time for Texas, exciting time for all of crypto in essence. Even Bitcoin getting this credibility is really good for altcoins. Like it's really good for those projects. It gives them credibility to traditional finance and to Wall Street. This is a big signal that things are changing and we need to get educated on it, pretty much point blank. So I'm very excited about that. The new digital economy. We have a whole new way of hiring people. There will be layoffs, but man, it's a really exciting time. The more I think about it in June and July, I think small business is going to go really big. I think we're going to see a lot of new lending programs, a lot of profitability in the marketplace for companies to open up and hire these people and create new companies in your very own neighborhood, people you can get to know again, so that we're not completely lost in this. Every town has a Walmart, a Costco, the same 5 gas stations, the same 12 fast food places. I'd love to go back to the old days where we had family-owned businesses that employed 10, 20 people, and everyone worked there for 25 years, and they were very happy and prosperous. That's part of the American dream, and you can only do that through the reduction of taxes. So exciting times ahead there. Now let's get into a little bit of politics before we wrap up here. The Epstein files still haven't been released. So there's some people who are absolutely super convicted that they're going to be released. There are some people who think they're never going to be released. There are certain people who think they don't exist. I don't know. What I find interesting, though, is that Ian Carroll went on Joe Rogan. They talked about this, the connections to Israel and Mossad, and the things that many people like me already knew are now going mainstream. Candace Owens is all over this stuff. But I think it's very interesting that in the midst of this, considering that most people believe that Pam Bondi, who is a Scientologist, which is fascinating, how she got this job, but many people are sitting here saying, well, Pam released the Epstein files, and then she didn't. And she says, well, now I have them, but we're going to redact them for national security purposes. Well, in case you were wondering whether or not the nation that needs security through redacting the Epstein files, if you're wondering what nation that is, that problem is solved. It's Israel. We already knew that, but it's become very apparent. And Pam right now is not working on the Epstein. Maybe she is. I don't want to be mean to Pam Bondi. I don't know Pam Bondi. All I know is what I see on the internet, and I don't hold that against people. But instead of releasing the Epstein files or even discussing them to the general public, she is now launching an investigation into anti-Semitism at the University of Cal Berkeley. So apparently our Attorney General thinks it's far more important that students at Cal Berkeley do not conduct anti-Semitism, which actually is an extension of free speech. You can be mean to Christians, you can be mean to Muslims, you can be mean to anyone else, but not them. And somehow that's more important than the Epstein files and exposing a sex trafficking ring that expands pretty much into every nation and every wealthy person throughout the world. So keep putting pressure on these people to get their jobs done. Nothing is perfect. No one is perfect. But that was just a scorcher to me. in the middle of the Epstein files. You're launching an investigation into one university about anti-Semitism, which isn't even the university that you should be doing that. The largest anti-Semitic protests are actually at Columbia University, which, by the way, was founded by the same researchers in Germany who were kicked out of Germany for conducting the first transgender operations and studies. The University of Columbia is a very interesting dig, and it ties directly back to Weimar Germany. Very interesting, but that's actually the place she should be. Why they're at Cal Berkeley astounds me, but it's a distraction from Epstein. Earlier this week, they found a $375 billion slush fund being run by John Podesta. If you've been following along with this stuff long enough, you know John Podesta, the former campaign manager for Hillary Clinton. Yeah, he's been getting hundreds of billions of dollars to manage an EPA slush fund. And that's, for me, the fascinating thing is that John Podesta's name is back in the news. If you followed any of this information for any period of time, you know how interesting that could be. The border is now getting rebuilt. The border wall is being rebuilt as we speak. I am one of those people where I take time and I have patience and I sit back and say, you know what, we were promised this day one, but it didn't happen day one. I'm not interested. I know how hard things are. Believe me, I'm trying to record these episodes 3 to 4 days a week, and I'm lucky if I get 1 or 2 in. So I get grace, so I give grace. And the border wall for me is kind of a non-negotiable. If we don't have a border wall completed, there's really no point in actual immigration laws at all. So the border wall is being rebuilt. The numbers for and this is on Polymarket, they expected 675,000 deportations this year. That number is down to 428,000. You have to remember, we had 21 million illegals enter this country. That's 21 million people. 21 million people, I think, if my stats draw right, that would be like the 7th or 8th largest state in the United States per population. So there's an entire state of people that are scattered throughout 48 continental states that are really honestly on the run. And people are stopping to show up for work. You're seeing empty Walmarts. People are hiding. It's going to be very difficult to find 21 million people. I still remember listening back on Telegram years ago. People go, it'll be no problem. They'll be, as soon as Trump's in office, he'll remove them in 2 weeks. It's just physically not possible. I'm very optimistic. But we are not deporting as many people as we'd like to right now. They are going after the hardened criminals and all that stuff first. That makes complete sense to me. But just to understand that the largest deportation in the world's history is going to take years. It will not be done in days, weeks, or months. It's going to take years. But the good news is they are deporting criminals. Start with them. That's great. But I think it's important that they're also building the wall at the same time. You have to shut it down before you pour it out. And that's really kind of where we are logistically. You can't just start deporting unless the wall is built. But we have seen a 98% decrease in encounters at the border. You have to start there, and then the deportations can really run through the door. So give ICE, give Tom Homan a little bit of grace. He probably has the hardest job in his position in the history of this country. And I really like Tom Homan. That's a guy I'd like to have a steak and a beer with sometime. So give him a little grace. I think that's on its way. Trump is filing papers this week or next week to officially disband the Department of Education, which he can't do. It's going to have to go through Congress. But at the same time, this debate is now up. We have gone from number 1 in the world in education to number 28. We are the largest economy, the most powerful military, and the most recognizable flag in the world is the United States. We are a staple in the global economy, the global world, and all of humanity. And we rank number 28 in education throughout the world. Our Department of Education has done nothing but create degeneracy and stupidity. They have lowered the actual average IQ of our students over these years. I don't know if it can be fixed. I don't know if it should be disbanded and broken apart, but I know something needs to change. And at least we're seeing that now. So we are seeing official documents come through for that. Amy Coney Barrett denied $2 billion in USAID funding, which actually isn't a big deal. Many people were up in arms about this. These are commitments we had that needed to be paid. There were services that were already rendered. The last thing I want my country to do is not pay its tab. So I don't really have a big problem with that, but it does raise the question of Amy Coney Barrett. Are you on our side or not? Are you on the American side or not? And I think that she has proven time after time that she is not. So we need to watch all these people and speak loudly about them. Trump just did get the approval to dismantle and get rid of USAID, which is a program that started under JFK. USAID has been tied to pretty much every criminal organization that masquerades as an NGO or a good foreign actor. This is a really big moment, and we'll see if that happens. He also has restricted and kind of put a leash on Elon. Elon does scare me. I'm not going to lie to you. I love what Elon's doing with Doge. It needs to be done, and no one can argue that. But I want to impose some reality here. If we get rid of all these government workers, and day 2 of Trump's administration, he put right in the forefront, here's Larry Ellison and Sam Altman, and they're going to help us with AI. And then Larry Ellison, within 2.5 minutes, not even that, it's like 30 seconds, we're going to develop mRNA vaccines for cancer and all this kind of stuff. Just looking at the timing of things, we got to be cautious that we're not clearing out the government and then putting in an AI surveillance state beast system. These are things to talk about, whether you like hearing that or not. I'm not here to deal hopium. I'm here to think critically and be open. And it was really good to see Trump put the reins on him today and say, listen, I need you to find the expenses and expose them. I'll take care of firing people. So a non-government person, non-associate, I'm not knocking Elon. And there's plenty of people who have. I mean, this is literally the guy building brain chips. So we need to be cautious about that. You can call me a black pillar all you like. I'm not black pilling. I'm just simply saying I'm not going to stop critically thinking because Donald Trump is in office. I love him. I supported him. I will continue to support him. That doesn't mean that I need to be his lapdog and just applaud everything he does. Larry Ellison is terrible. Sam Altman is terrible. You've already put him in a position of power, or at least out front. We're taking foreign capital. We're letting people buy visas. There's a lot of things that I have problems with. I actually don't really care much about them. Fix the taxes, get the tariffs, lower the groceries, bolster small business. We've already gotten rid of woke and DEI. We have so many wins. There are so many wins, but let's not let the wins get in the way of what a country should be and what we want for our future, for our children. And the last thing that I want is a fully, beast system AI government running itself. I also don't want a bunch of morons and idiots that collect checks to do nothing. So quite the dilemma that we find ourselves in. But I try to bring up things that these are obvious to me, and everyone will say, oh no, that's not going to happen. I don't know. I don't know. I just try to be cautious and continually critically think. Ukraine right now is trying to gather themselves back together. We have heard that the mineral rights deal is done. We have heard that it is not. We have heard that it's back. There's going to be so much mis and disinformation in the next 4 or 5 months as things get cleaned out. I'm focusing more on my relationship with God and my family and building my business. And these things are super important. But Ukraine right now, the EU is actually trying to rally up funding. While this is the most interesting thing, we keep hearing, and I don't know if this is true or not, we keep hearing that the Ukrainian government wants to impeach Zelensky. I will remind you that while Zelensky's been in office, this little puppet that runs around, he has arrested all the Orthodox Christian pastors in the nation. He's basically eliminated Christianity. He has completely imprisoned the only dissenting political party, kind of the conservatives in Ukraine. And it's a non-functional dictatorship there right now. So I'm not quite sure if I take the impeaching of Zelensky seriously, just due to the fact that there is no opposing party and it's not really a democracy anymore. But we keep hearing that, and that's a good thing. They should impeach him, and you can replace the guy with Kermit the Frog and you'll be better off. But they are pretty much now cut off on all intelligence. So we have cut off all intel going to Ukraine, which really was directly correlated with layoffs at the CIA the same exact hour. So we probably have, no question, we have really bad actors in the CIA that get paid by foreign nationals to share intelligence. That's cut off. They cut off intel to Perkins Coie. How in the world the law firm from the DNC or the RNC, how in the world did a law firm ever get access to U.S. intelligence? They don't have it anymore, but good grief. How much stuff have we let go by? Why are private law firms getting U.S. intelligence? This is a ridiculous thing that had to be done, but it's done. And I think somewhere along the way, we're going to find something in the CIA that is going to absolutely shock us. And I don't know if that's possible because I understand very thoroughly how intelligence agencies work and what their primary purpose is. You got to remember, guys, the CIA, where they train, is called the farm. We are cattle, and they're teaching farmers to manage the cattle. So if you want to know who drives the truck, it's intelligence agencies worldwide, the Mossad and CIA. And I talk about this stuff all the time. I'm trying to keep this short. But we are now not sharing intel with Ukraine, and we are opening the doors to sharing data with Russia. So that's a really big paradigm shift right there. I think this war, first of all, this war should have never happened. half of it is just, all of it's been money laundering. I don't trust anyone, to be honest with you, unless I know you personally. But I do kind of give validity to Colonel McGregor. I think he's been spot on this entire time, and he has stated that 1.2 million people have died in this war. It needs to end. And it looks like we're getting closer to peace there. Sharing data with Russia, I can't wait to see what the left has to say in the media. And I'll make this quick reminder. The right will always blame China. The left will always blame Russia, and they will both team up to blame Iran. So if we're looking at Israel right now, Netanyahu has basically come out and said that, we have a ceasefire agreement. I'm not going to honor it. Didn't shock me in any way, shape, or form. But it looks like the whole Gaza, we're going to buy Gaza, clear it out, rebuild it, displace the Palestinians. The Egyptians have come in and they've basically said, well, we have a better plan. We'll put up $55 billion, help rebuild Gaza and not displace the Palestinians. I think that's the best course of action. We need to stay out of the Middle East. That is their territory, their land. Let them run it the way they want to. But Israel is going to be shaking things up here in the very near future. Trump wants the hostages back. Everyone should want the hostages back, whether you support Israel or whoever. We should not want Americans anywhere in dungeons or tunnels. I think this is really being blown out of proportion, but it looks like we're prepared, if the hostages aren't returned, to give full force and authority to Israel, and they'll just go ahead and destroy Gaza anyway. It's in Netanyahu's plans. This isn't everyone that lives in Israel, of course, but they are the main source of problem. Like, they're behind Epstein. Our attorney general is fighting anti-Semitism. Josh Hawley the other day. Who I like Josh Hawley, he's also an actor. Like, they're all friends. Okay, so don't let the speech that Trump just gave and the weirdos with the signs and the guy in Al Green walking out, it's all the world is a stage, and they're a bunch of actors. But Josh Hawley said that we're putting an executive order here. Anyone who commits anti-Semitism, who's in a college from a foreign country, will be deported. Josh Hawley said, if anyone commits a violent crime against a Jewish person at a college campus or in America, they will be deported. Like I'm all for that. But what about Christians? What about Americans? What about non-Jews? And when do we start standing up for them? You can have any thought about this that you want, but I think it's paramount that, in most other areas of the world, we have to be very politically correct, except for when it comes to anti-Semitism. And I think you're watching a big boil up, because Israel has been absolutely in charge of the United States for the better part of 50 years. Israel was created 1 year after the CIA was created. The Mossad is, through deception, we shall wage war. That is literally their motto. And they are tied into every sort of USAID funding, the media, entertainment, the government, banking. We need to unravel the Israel-America ties and go back to nationalism. And that has nothing to do with a personal opinion. It's just too intertwined. So until that problem is resolved, and I've done plenty of podcasts about this, so if you want me to get deeper on it, just go back and look at other podcasts. This is a situation we have to deal with. But at the end of the day, we can look at all this information and see the markets going crazy and all this political stuff happening, and we can either curl up in a blanket or do what I did about 2 hours ago. I got very excited looking at this data. I think we are going to see a boom in small business. I think we're going to see a boom in education over the next couple of years. I think we're going to see a complete revamping of all of our government structures, and I hope that involves cleaning everything out and making everything America first instead of Israel first. Let's focus in on America. You can't serve two masters. You can't do that. It's biblical. And speaking of such, every day I get a chance. I'm very blessed. I get to wake up in the morning. I read a little bit of scripture. I get in my day. I get to work, and in the middle of the day, I do a prayer group on Telegram. Once a week, I have a men's ministry at my house. It's so important in these uncertain times that you get together with other people, other believers, other people who are on the same path, that you talk about higher things, not things that are human related. Who cares about what happens on planet Earth? Get rid of that from time to time. Just get in prayer, get in meditation, talk to other people, read some scripture. Don't forget to do that. Just feed your soul. I talked about feeding your pocket and feeding your lust for politics, but feed your soul. Do these things that are good for you. You want to change your life, it starts from within, and he will help you with that. Get into prayer, change your life, because I think we're going to go through Lutnick, Bassett, and Trump have all specifically stated, we're going to go through a rocky period to create a better country. I have said this for 5 years. We're going to have to walk through hell to get to heaven. And this has never been more obvious. We've been through hell. We've been through pretty tough times in the last 4 years. Another few months isn't going to kill us. But what I think we see at the end of the rainbow here is I think that this final push of difficult times, and they may get very difficult, especially financially. I think a lot of people are going to lose jobs in the coming 6 months. But I think a few months after that, they're going to find new jobs at really good companies and really good small businesses that they're going to love and that their families are going to be taken care of. I have to believe that. If I don't believe that, then what are we doing here on Earth? But I think along the pathway, what we're going to find out is that these difficult times that we've been through have created stronger people. Stronger people create better nations, that our nation is going to be one nation under God. And I think you're going to see a lot of people over this time frame really be appreciative for the things that we have in this country, because we have it all. We literally have. Our poorest people would be middle class in some of the other countries. They'd be upper class in many countries around the world. If we finally start to realize this and take the appreciation that we should have for it back into our hands and get ourselves into a grounded position where we can be appreciative every day and work hard every day, our futures change. If we can just get through this difficult time, get rid of the FUD that exists in the marketplace today. I look at everything from both sides. The last thing I want to be is a blind sheep led into slaughter. That's like the last thing I want to be. I also don't want to be an idiot that overanalyzes everything and doesn't enjoy the ride. But what I'm always going to be is someone who looks at things from both perspectives. And eventually those two perspectives meet in the middle and you have truth. And we'll continue to break that down here. I hope to get on camera a little bit more next week and help you guys out. I'm going to be on again tomorrow. So I will be on Friday the 7th. We'll discuss some of the crypto things. I'm going to, again, go through a little crypto education tomorrow. Just do a quick rundown, but I hope to see you all there. I've got a good interview coming out tomorrow. I think you'll enjoy, with a stock and bond guy out of New York City. I think you'll like him. It was a great conversation, really quick. So hopefully you'll see that first thing in the morning. You'll see this tonight or tomorrow morning. We'll get a couple more episodes out here, and then I'm going to take a few days off and go on vacation with the family in the coming couple of weeks. So until next time, I am Eric Rice. God bless you. God bless you all. God bless this country, and we'll see you next time.